the happy task of awarding the degree of Juris Doctor to 309 candidates and the Masters of Law to 36. Marshals, if you will please prepare our LLM graduates. Now, as this happens, I have a moment or two while the candidates line up. And I want to do two things. First, there is with us today someone else who is graduating. It's our provost. After 14 years of remarkable service and support for this law school, he has decided to pursue a new career, I believe, as a painter. It's a wonderful thing to know that he will still be in the community, however, as he also pursues the important work of writing the history of the university. Phil Gilbertson has been a friend, a supporter, a guide, always there to encourage. It was his idea to support our educational pipeline effort, and it was his idea to create the bilingual educational opportunity that we know as the Inter-American Project, where students learn to become competent professionally, personally, and culturally in Spanish. Dr. Gilbertson, if you would join me. Now, it perhaps is not traditional to tell you what's in this box, but in the interest of moving forward, we have here a globe. Phil, you have committed yourself to international education, which is at the core of a McGeorge education in ways that are exemplary. But I want you also to think that you've changed a world. You've certainly changed our world, and I thank you.
It has been a great pleasure and an honor to serve McGeorge School of Law. Thank you.
And now I have just a moment to say my final word to the class of 2010 before they become alums. This is always a difficult time for me because, like any parent, I know on the one hand nothing I can say will add to what you have already achieved and accomplished, your own class members have described so eloquently, and yet, like any parent, I can't resist. I have to say one thing more. But before I say something about you and to you, I want to take a moment to acknowledge your support systems that I know are here with us, whether parents, friends, colleagues, aunts, uncles. Join me in giving them a hand, because we know you don't do it by yourself. But to everyone, I want to say just a word about this remarkable class. I think you saw in the speakers the quality, the extraordinary depth of commitment, the understanding of their roles as they go forward. And so I'll just add a few small things. The wonderful work you've done to celebrate diversity, certainly lost on none of us in Diversity Week. And the extraordinary support in difficult economic times that you've created in your Public Legal Services Society auction this year. Who would have believed that in these economic times you would have raised more money than last year? What a wonderful indication of your commitment to public service. Over $65,000 raised. And as if that weren't enough, I was touched and deeply moved to know that 35% of you have contributed to the Alumni Fund, which is allowing you to contribute over $6,000 to the university with help from our wonderful alum, John Masterman, who's of course on our alumni board. But what an indication that is to your understanding that this university, this law school succeeds because it is a community, and we must all be a part of it. Now, then we turn to something else that I don't like to talk about. It's the U.S. News ranking system. I don't think this ranking system deserves the time we give it, but there is one thing worthy of note on this occasion. This year, we were ranked 5th in the nation for our advocacy program. 5th Now, this ranking is not just a reputational contest. Who has the biggest, best-known football team? Who's aligned with the largest university, research university name recognition, and so on. Rather, this is an award that I believe happens because others working in advocacy observe the students we produce. And so students, graduates of the class of 2010, celebrate the fact that you are critically responsible for this acknowledgement of the quality that you represent. Thank you. In conclusion, I want to end where, if you'll think back to that first welcome reception, I began. Look to your right, look to your left, and remind yourself that none of us succeed alone. Those are your colleagues. These are the colleagues soon to become your fellow alums. They will help you succeed. This is not the best economic times in which to graduate. But I pledge to you this: your preparation, your commitment to ethics and service, and the leadership you've demonstrated. Together, you're providing what California, the nation, and the world need and must have, and together we will ensure that you are as successful as your qualifications, commitment, preparation, and most importantly, your passion deserves you to be. And so with that, President Ibeck, I present to you candidates for the degrees of the Masters of Law and Juris Doctor.
Upon the recommendation of the faculty and by the authority vested in me by the Board of Regents of the University of the Pacific, I confer upon you the degree you have earned. Congratulations.
Presenting the candidates for the degree of Masters of Laws in Transnational Business Practice, Ekaterina Pronicheva. Julia Bratimirova. Laura Milera. Boris Utnasunev. Nina Aprasov. Sebastian Lusom Nielsen. Simon Shroshinsky. Stefan Kurth. Sebastian Kittel. Sua Yao. Natella Oteridze. Daniela Reinhardt with Alicia. Thomas Torop. Bandar Ali Alamari. Presenting the candidates for the degree of Master of Laws in Public Law and Policy, Elena Eckhart, accompanied by Daniel. Joshua Aaron Jones. Presenting the candidates for the degree of Master of Laws in Teaching of Advocacy, Grace Gatabaru. Li Feng. Yao Guinjian. Fu Chen accompanied by baby Chloe. Siglinde Grubinger. Yuri Netrasov. Olena Kardash. President Ibeck, we now present to you the candidates for the degree of Juris Doctor, beginning with the valedictorians, upon whom you shall confer valedictorian medals, and those members of the class of 2010 selected by our Faculty Committee on Honors and Awards for special recognition. The valedictorian for the day division of the class of 2010 is Jared Kali Leite. Mr. Leite is also recognized for overall scholastic accomplishment with the Outstanding Scholastic Achievement Award. The valedictorian for the evening division of the class of 2010 is Andrew Stewart Burnick, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Mr. Burnick is also recognized for overall scholastic accomplishment with the Outstanding Scholastic Achievement Award. Recognized for outstanding scholarship and academic achievement with the Outstanding Graduating Senior Award for the Day Division, David Roy Wixell, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. And for the Evening Division, Jennifer Lynn Brettschneider, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Recognized by the committee, go ahead. Recognized by the committee for having overall scholastic accomplishment with the Outstanding Scholastic Achievement Award for the Day Division, Evelyn Anna Grosnick, Order of the Coif, with great distinction. And for the Evening Division, James William Houston, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Recognized by the committee for remarkable contributions to the McGeorge community with the Outstanding Student Achievement Award for the Day Division, Jennifer Elizabeth March, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction, Advocacy Certificate. And for the Evening Division, Jeanette Figueroa Zapata, with distinction. Elected for inclusion in Who's Who among students in American universities and colleges for the Day Division, Caitlin Elizabeth Howard, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. And for the Evening Division, Joseph Benjamin Thusen, accompanied by Angela, Joey, Ben, Alyssa, and Emma. Recognized by the committee for best representing a combination of scholarship and leadership with the American Law Institute, American Bar Association Scholarship and Leadership Award for the Day Division, Catherine Rachel Matisich, with distinction. And for the Evening Division, Brianna Learman Hinsey, with distinction. Finally, the Faculty Committee on Honors and Awards gives you the recipients of the Outstanding Student Service Award in recognition of the graduating seniors who have given the most significant service to the McGeorge community. For the Day Division, Nubia Isabel Lemus, with distinction. For the Evening Division, Melissa Lacine Johnson, Certificate in Advocacy. Continuing with the JD class of 2010, Jessica Lynn Radke, Certificate, Public Law and Policy. Frank William Jackson, the Order of the Coif with great distinction. Shelby Markale Gatlin, the Order of the Coif with great distinction. Lilka Borshov Martinez with great distinction. Charlie Magnuson Center. Kyle Thomas Hospice, Advocacy Certificate. Brian Yi Chow.
Run!
Christopher Roger Chin, Advocacy Certificate. Craig Matthew Thomas, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Colleen Rosemary Villarreal, Advocacy Certificate. Elizabeth Kennard Kiesling, with great distinction. Seaton Sy. Ada Virginia Ty. Katie Kunz, with distinction. Diana N. Connaughton, with distinction. Alexis Michelle Klein, with distinction. Nicole Legratali. Amy Perry. Selena Ayala Patlan. Madiel Covarrubias, Certificate in International Legal Studies. Scott Douglas Keefe, with distinction. Nicholas James Anderson, accompanied by Noah and Spencer, with distinction. Matthew Jason Staub. William Jeffrey Kramer, Public Law and Policy Certificate. Christopher Thomas Cardenas, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Michael Arthur Basso. Justin Anthony Santa Rosa. Casey Hazelhofer. Seth Ross Benkel, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Nicholas Anthony Carpozzi. Matthew Stephen Thomas Lonza. Peter Kohlberg Zeitloff. Robert Stephen Gimblin, accompanied by baby Ella. Timothy John Pharma. Sarah Elizabeth Donald, International Studies Certificate. Stephanie L. Sawyer. Mary Bajo. Sean Ramallo Coletta. Hold for just a minute now. Andrea Ray Garcia. Jenny Harmon with distinction. Elizabeth Kathleen Tygusen with distinction. Stephen Robert Ulson with distinction. Dina Petrushenko with distinction. Bo Lee Bay with distinction. Cheryl Pauline Robertson with distinction. Jennifer Lee Liwanug Mendoza with distinction. Sarah Marie Van Slyke with distinction. Joel Daniel DeMant with distinction. Kathleen Penny DeMant, Advocacy Certificate and with distinction. Hold on here. Ladies and gentlemen, we're pleased to announce the oldest graduate in the 86-year history of the University of the Pacific McGeorge School of Law. At age 79, Alice M. Thomas. Continuing with the class of 2010, Chadwick J. Johnson, accompanied by Erica, Kaylin, Cameron, Sophia, and Chad Jr. Kurt Noah Strauss. Blair Harvey Witters with distinction. John Gardner Hensel with distinction. Samuel Carlos Hall. Brian John Miller. Nathaniel Hunter Clark with distinction. Christina Marie Eastman with great distinction, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Andrew Brian Reisinger. Kyle Michael Peters, Certificate in Public Law and Policy with distinction. Katie Elizabeth Beliles. Stephanie Renee Hartung, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Brianne Eileen Fine Richmond. Diane Elizabeth Crawford with distinction. Spencer Ryan Tressler with distinction. Samuel John Levy the Order of the Coif with great distinction. Brooks Vincent Rice with distinction. Gerald John Cho. Harriet Anderson. April Ann Van Dyke, accompanied by Waylon Gregory Van Dyke with distinction. Colleen Ann Snyder, accompanied by Sammy Holcomb with distinction. Anthony Ramo Luna, accompanied by Atticus and Augustine with distinction. Jessica Jaguar, International Legal Studies Certificate and with distinction. Jessely O. Samar, with distinction, Advocacy Certificate. Mark Minor. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to announce the youngest graduate in the 86-year history of the University of the Pacific McGeorge School of Law, at age 19, Zachary Powell. Continuing with the class of 2009, Joanne C. Lamb, with distinction, Public Law and Policy. Farina Siddiqui Azar, International Legal Studies Certificate. Carrie Robin Eskenazi, International Legal Certificate, Studies Certificate, and with distinction. Carl Edward Meyer, Jr., Public Law and Policy Certificate. Adam Philip Rosenberg. Ryan Singh Young, with distinction. Marvin Hayes Stroud, with distinction. Teresa Marie Stroud. Patrick Elliston White III. David Allen Cox. Robert Bagram Foramond. Dana Rochelle Boteo. James Earl Coffey, Jr. Katie Peter Beckerjian. Monica Carr Graywall. Ashley Hamidi. Shelley Virginia Hoff, accompanied by Jordan. Vanessa Whitnell, accompanied by Kevin and Madeline. Gilberto Benito Vega. Charles C. Kamala Swift Taylor, with great distinction. Jana Lynn Stanford, Certificate Public Law and Policy. Lauren Joy Costales. Beatrice Berumen, accompanied by Virginia. Michelle Lee Kroll. Aubrey Allison Cairns, with distinction. Terry Ann Armstrong Grimes, the Order of the Coif, great distinction. Ronald Russell Darby, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Peter Michael Clark. Catherine Rigby. Natalie Ray Fujii. Stanley Sue. Eli Moreno Sanchez. Diana Nicole Chin. Brooke Allison Fong. Julia Ann Himovitz, accompanied by Noah Himovitz. Alexis Therese Thordas, accompanied by William. Ray Devon Hackey, International Legal Studies Certificate. Joel Anthony Kane, with distinction. Ross Daniel Colburn. Genevieve Marie Wong, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Lisa Polovich. Christine Elizabeth Hansen, with distinction, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Dana Marion Garibay, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Natasha Lee Fenig. Felicia Williams. Christian Gabriel Morrow, accompanied by Aiden. Christine Michelle Scribner. Carrie Zalud Ramos. Jason Robert Genhart. John Belcher. Robert Isaac Curtis. Andrea Roxana Bergeno. Mark Lamar Carlson, with distinction, Certificate in Advocacy, accompanied by Porter and Mason. Ibsen. Michael Brooks Ibsen. Aaron Kent Bergman, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Cody Alexander Drabble, with distinction. Christopher David Carvagnaro, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction, Advocacy Certificate. Tyler Vance Heath, with distinction. Rebecca Leah Grodsky, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Mallory Elizabeth DeLauro, Advocacy Certificate. Heather E. Gibbons, with distinction, Advocacy Certificate. Kristen Allison Bloker, Allison Bloker, Certificate in International Legal Studies. David Ethan Meyerson, Certificate in Public Law and Policy.
Also have a certificate buried in the bottom there.
Gabriel Arthur Rutherford, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Matthew Dean Scott. Michaela Janae West. Brittany Esther Ruple, Advocacy Certificate with distinction. Nicole Leanne Jameson, accompanied by Robert and Madeline. Michelle Diana Lowe, with distinction, Advocacy Certificate. Lydia Vanessa Coe, with distinction, Advocacy Certificate. Michelle Agnes Howland, Advocacy Certificate. Catherine Irene Rankin, with distinction. Melissa Diane Soto. Mani Partesh, with distinction. Edward J. Day. Benjamin David Oram. Melissa Sandoval Greenwich, with distinction. Nazila Saulek, with distinction. Vincent G. Bueller, with great distinction. Samara Rani Norali, with distinction. Caitlin Lee Sabrin. Diane Elizabeth Bauer, with distinction. Joy Yu Han. Amanda Christine Heiner. Christopher Lee Cordes. Michael David Reekers. Lauren D. Lane, with distinction. Emily Ann Four, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Cheryl Shizuko Shitabata, with distinction. Juliet Cho, Advocacy Certificate. Maylene Leon, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Serena J. Kwaja. Christopher James Cook, with distinction. Michael Francis Brennan. Ronald Paul Rivez, Advocacy Certificate. Correction, Ronald Paul Rives. We'll get it right. Milad Dalju. Adam Dellinger Link, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Grant Robert Zender, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Curtis Anthony Gilzine. Kevin Anthony McKinley, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Michael James Snoke with great distinction, International Legal Studies Certificate, accompanied by Maddie and Alex. Aaron Allen Ferguson with distinction.
We're married, and it's our baby.
Brian Philip Briggs and Tessa Frances Briggs with baby daughter Emerald Rose Briggs. Stephanie M. Viray. Jillian Elizabeth Sarah Ann Brown Costa. Holly Pauline Gorman, Advocacy Certificate. Amber Lunsford. Inderdeep Singh Atwal. Nikki Elaine Suyuko Ozawa. Joel E. Kautz with distinction. Robert B. Rice III with Monique Rice, Advocacy Certificate. Catherine Camille Nelson with distinction. Hey. Trevor Jacob Newhouse. Robert Michael Romero, Certificate in Advocacy. Stephanie Maroon, Certificate in Advocacy. Polonius Connor Matthias McCann. Alexandra Sugarman Thomas. Joanna Christine Duenas. Ruth Ising Leong. Andrea Christine Logue, the Order of the Coif with great distinction. Jennifer Chan Wu. Courtney Marie Pribilski, the Order of the Coif with great distinction, Advocacy Certificate. Tiffany Diane Corona, Advocacy Certificate. William Harrison Myers III. Laura Catherine Lackman. James Kwang-il Ko. Christy Marie Kellogg. Byron Thomas Nelson. Jacob Charles Rasmussen. Andrew Christopher Smith with distinction. Derek Frederick Smith with distinction. Kirk Douglas Lewis. Jeremy Luke Hendricks, the Order of the Coif with great distinction. Matthew James Roberts. Jacob Paul Bazar. Dennis Howard Flesh with great distinction, International Legal Studies Certificate. Dustin Jordan Dyer. David S. Rojas. Claire Riley Cutler and P. Asher Cutler. Gregory Lamont Fields, International Legal Studies Certificate. Brian C. Kauth. Stacy Lynn Power, Advocacy Certificate. Coleman Everett Ramsey, accompanied by Braden Burke Ramsey. Matthew B. Johnson, with distinction. Nicole Christine Rangel, with great distinction, Certificate in International Legal Studies. Jocelyn Michelle Godinho, with distinction. Christine Ann Elliott. Alex Levine, with great distinction. Jeremy Ryan Mertz, with distinction.
Yeah, Jeremy.
Kara Rosenberg Kane, with distinction. Chol Daniel Kim. Jarrett Christopher Noble, with distinction. Brandon Thomas Hale. Joanna Yum. Diana Sun. Julie Nguyen. Ryan Benjamin Kennedy, with distinction. Craig Andrew Tomlins, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Catherine Anna Larson Cook, with distinction. Gina Louise Bauer, with distinction. Christopher James Stipe. Raymond Alexander Thomas, Advocacy Certificate. Christopher Michael Wagner, with distinction. Alex Samuel Harari, Capital Public Policy Certificate. Ethan Merritt Weisinger, Advocacy Certificate. Amber Nicole Sace. Lun Deep, International Legal Studies Certificate. Emily Rachel Hersekorn, the Order of the Coif, with great distinction. Sarah Rose Donsero, Certificate in Public Law and Policy. Nathan Max Osorio, with distinction. David Samuel Hinshaw, with distinction. J. McBride Kelly, with distinction. Joshua Tyler Smith. Matt Yedruzeyak. Danny Lopez, International Legal Studies Certificate. Michael Curtis Christensen, with distinction. Robindeep Singh Basra, with great distinction.
Don't forget the Maria. I forgot to put it in there. Maria.
Anna Maria Belitsiotis, with distinction. Dustin Saidi. Jennifer Ann King, with distinction. Laurel Ann Berzankas, International Legal Studies Certificate. Ileana Butu. Yonit Kovnatur, Public Law and Policy Certificate with distinction. Daniel S. Vendikulwik, Order of the Coif with great distinction. Jonathan Peter Sibayan. Jared William Stevenson, Advocacy Certificate with distinction. Tammy Van Dyne Castillo. Robert Little Lopez, accompanied by Taylor, Gabrielle, and Tristan. The Order of the Coif with great distinction. Corin Philip Saxton, the Order of the Coif with great distinction. Michaela Jewel Miller. Ladies and gentlemen, the Juris Doctor degree class of 2010.
What a wonderful day. But it isn't over yet. I'd like, on behalf of the class of 2010 and the faculty, to invite all of you to join us for a reception at the law school campus immediately following the academic recessional. We thank you for joining this wonderful ceremony today. Without family and friends to join in celebrating the accomplishments of our graduate, it wouldn't be the day it is. And I look forward to greeting each of you and to celebrating yet again back on campus. To close our ceremony, I'll invite the Reverend Canon Kelly to pronounce the benediction. Following the benediction, please remain in your seats until the graduating class has left the floor of the auditorium. I look forward to greeting each of you soon back on campus.
Graduates, for all your days, may you be served by eager minds, bent on finding a way where others see no way. Humble hearts, able to cry out for help. Generous spirits, never anxious, always seeing enough to share. And above all, may you be served by stubborn hope that illumines the darkest night. Amen.